Hey all you cinema buffs out there, I'm Dennis Stack, and here's my review for Atomic Blonde. Now, Atomic Blonde stars Charlize Theron and James McAvoy. It's based on a graphic novel about, it's set against the backdrop of the fall of the Berlin Wall back in 1989, and Charlize Theron plays this British agent working for MI6, and she's sent to Berlin to, once again, retrieve the list of agents and their real identities, and it's kind of familiar territory with the plot, but the thing that got me interested with this movie is that it was directed by one of the co-directors of the original John Wick. There are a little bit, some John Wick isms in this movie. I don't want to spend this whole review comparing it to John Wick, but there's sometimes in this movie where it begs the comparison. A lot of Russian being spoken in this movie. I get it. It's about the Berlin Wall, it's about the Cold War. Of course there's going to be Russian being spoken in this movie, but there's a lot of it. And the thing that got me intrigued with David Lynch directing this was the use of action. The action in this movie is quality, but it doesn't really stand out. I feel like it's subpar to what we've seen out of this director already. There's a moment in this movie where Charlize Theron's character puts on a mask unnecessarily and goes to a fight sequence, and I'm like, all right, so clearly that was the stunt double. But then at the end of the fight sequence, the mask comes down. It was really Charlize Theron who did it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like a clever little thing where they're saying, hey, it's not going to be a stunt woman. She's really doing this. But later in this movie, there is this huge action set piece. And it is clearly obvious that it is not Charlize Theron in these fight sequences. And that just kind of it made that earlier scene either invalid, or it makes me want to go back and or is that really clever editing and it was the stunt woman in that, and that's just their way of showing you hey, look how good we can edit this movie. You're not even going to tell the difference. There are moments where it is her fighting, and I gotta say that I was very impressed by this and her performance in it. And she didn't play this cold secret agent and everything like that. She had emotion. She made connections with people throughout this movie, and I kind of like that, where they just don't send some stone cold assassin who's the greatest killer ever, and then they feel emotion. No, this is an emotional person who had ties before, ties throughout, and, you feel a little bit of resolution, a little bit redemption with Charlize Theron's character. And also, Sofia Boutella, she's great, but I just felt like when they cast her, I'm like, oh, there's going to be some sweet fight sequence with her, because she's a gymnast and martial artist. There wasn't. James McAvoy, this guy's just been impressing me left and right, almost every movie I've seen him in. I think his performance in Split is one of my top 3 favorite performances of the year so far, and he's also very good in this movie. Not only was the action just a little subpar, it just wasn't very well punctuated in this movie. I would say that's the biggest flaw with this movie, is the pacing. It's this thing where, they interview someone after everything happens, they talk about when it goes, what happens, they go back and forth, and they jump even farther back in time. So it just got a little bit confusing where I was at the story at some point. It does this thing where they're trying to figure out who a secret identity, a traitor, a double agent is. And the whole time the movie's going, it's that person, it's that person, it's that person, when clearly it's not going to be. There's going to be a twist at the end. And I feel like when they point too heavily at one person, it's kind of obvious who the real double agent is. And it's just, it harkens back to, it reminded me a lot of 90s spy movies. I felt Mission Impossible a lot. The Usual Suspects, things like that, where it's just all these different identities and false stories and backstories and everything like that, and just got a little too convoluted for me. But that doesn't say there aren't positives to this movie. It's set in the 80s, so there is a really sweet soundtrack, and especially it's set in 80s Europe, so a lot of 80s European music. Of course, 99 Luftballons is in there at some point. But I think that they used the setting of the 80s to their advantage, and the backdrop of the Berlin Wall. They really went into that, and I like the things that they explored with that, the themes that they explored, with capitalism versus communism. But I feel like it just kind of got bogged down by clunky dialogue. Yes, there's a lot of information to be given in this movie, and you can't all show it. Sometimes you have to tell it, but it feels like you were mostly told it and hardly shown it.
Buffs.
Okay, so I told you how I felt about Atomic Blonde. Yes, there was some good and there was some bad, but I feel like this movie just kind of fell flat. I don't think there's anything really stand out about it to go see. There is a sequence at the end where they try to shoot this, they make this action sequence look like it's all done in one shot, in one take, which is cool for a little bit. Yeah, you can tell where there's invisible edits, Then this thing goes on forever and ever, and it's to the point where it's like, you're not fooling anybody, and this isn't Birdman. I don't understand this creative choice. So, I feel like this movie had a lot of promise, but at the end, it just kind of fell flat. So, I would say if you want an action movie and, you got nothing better to do on the weekend, yeah, go ahead, check it out. But if it's your one movie of the summer, I can't recommend this one. So, I'm just going to give it a 6 out of 10.
Buffs.
Alright guys, so that's it for my review of Atomic Blonde. What did you think of the movie? Did I try to compare it too much to John Wick or hold it up to that standard? Why don't you go ahead and leave your comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate all the support here at Cinema Bus. And join us next week as we review The Dark Tower. Nate's read a couple of these books. I haven't read any of them, so we'll get a movie adaptation review and a pure movie-going experience review. So we'll bring you that review next week, but until then, don't forget, there's no place like the theater.